Hello to all of our listeners. My name is Tofay, and today is another great day to be a social worker. Welcome to Social Work Amplified, a podcast hosted by SPEAK. SPEAK stands for Social Policy, Education, Advocacy, and Knowledge, and our mission is to amplify the voices of social workers by providing resources, increasing students' political engagement, and facilitating networking opportunities. Speak would like to gratefully acknowledge the generous support of the Simmons Sisters Fund at Texas Women's Foundation. I would like to introduce our guest for today's podcast, Renika Atkins. Renika Atkins is a dynamic speaker, founder, Black girl tech investor, and master's level social worker in the healthcare IT industry. Whether she is mentoring young girls in foster care or training C-suite executives, Renika commands her audience with her smile and vibrant personality. Having had a difficult journey herself and still being able to find ways to rise above her circumstances and become successful, Renika's dedication to her own purpose in life has gained her over 8 years of experience in serving students, young adults, and service providing professionals. She has spent the last 5 years growing and leading Rise, a nonprofit organization with a mission to bridge the disparity gap between foster youth, alumni, and their community, growing through mentorship, education, awareness, and advocacy. While cultivating her nonprofit, one of her greatest undertakings have been assisting passionate leaders cultivate nonprofit startup success and sustainable resources. Renika is a powerhouse speaker and empowering coach with a passion to motivate students, young adults, and leaders to unlock their greatest potential and unleash their greatest skills and talents onto the world. Welcome, Renika. We're so excited to have you today. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, your biography was so intense. So I'm so excited to hear from you today and all the things that you do. You seem to do like a variety of stuff, and you seem to be a very unique social worker in the fact that you're working in the healthcare IT industry. So we're just gonna get to know a lot about you today, and I want to start off by asking what made you go into the field of social work to begin with.
Really, just my own life experiences. Just being former foster youth or adopted out of foster care, and also going to college and understanding that there was a deeper need for those who are able to provide resources and also cultivate resources. I kind of just went into social work. I had when I attended Texas Women's University for my bachelor's, I was in the sociology program, but I had a very close relationship with the social work department, and they always joked that I needed to change my degree, but I was too close to graduating. I was too close to being done. So, but I went back and I told them, well, I'm kind of social worker now. I'm going to get my master's in it. And they were so excited. So that's kind of why I went into social work.
Oh, that's really nice. I like how you said that you wanted to provide resources and cultivate resources, which is what I believe social workers do. We not only provide resources, but we also cultivate them. So you did your undergrad in sociology. Did you see any correlation between sociology and social work? Do you know what are the kind of the differences between both programs?
Yeah, so there's not a huge difference unless you get a deeper understanding of both of them. So in sociology, we kind of just looked at the behaviors and the theories behind the environment and people, how people kind of are structured in the environment or in the population, and some of the behavior patterns that they have as a society. Like, where did they come from? How did we have this construct of family and of groups and of religion and of ethnicity and things of that sort? In social work, we help people navigate through those constructs, removing barriers to access to resources for people to be successful. So they have a lot in common because we work with people in both of them. But I would say the biggest difference is theory versus application.
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking. I was going to say social workers are more like foot on the ground. I think that's how the saying goes. They're actually out there trying to make the change and not just study it, not just trying to understand it, but trying to attack it as well. So, like you do a lot. You have your own 9 to 5 job, I
Yeah.
guess, and then you have a nonprofit organization, and then you have a consulting business. So, I mean, I want to get to know about all of that. So, first of all, I want to we're gonna go into your healthcare IT job. How does your social work degree help you in that industry, and how did you like navigate yourself into that industry?
Yeah, so I tell people all the time, I utilize my social work degree all the time. I should have probably got a degree in psychiatry too. Because ultimately, what I do is I work in technology. So for hospitals who take on different electronic medical record systems, I help them to design the training environment, build the training environment, build the curriculum, and also train the trainers who train the hospital staff. At the end of the day, there's a few things that's happening. I'm managing change on a large scale for an organization. Because most organizations, when they take on a new technology, that means a new change in job roles, job functions, day-to-day functions for people. And a lot of people aren't good with change.
Yeah.
So we help to implement and manage that change and empower those users or hospital staff to better utilize the resources that they have so that they can deliver great healthcare and be a resource to the community that they serve in. I always tell people at the end of the day, at the end of technology and all this engineering and STEM as in general, the point is for it to touch or be touched by an individual, a person, a human,
Mhm.
eventually. We don't just throw all this stuff out there and it not affect people in the environment or population that they live in. So I utilize my social work skills in that way. That, of course, when I'm designing curriculum, when I'm approaching higher ups to be an advocate, I very much I very much still use my social work background to say this is what it'll look like for the community. Um, be it person driven, right? The things that we do, we keep the person in mind first and not just our key performance indicators or whatever. I think that's how I incorporate it, or that's how I would like to think I incorporate social work into it. And I went from social work direct practice into technology, more so for a career change,
Mhm.
an income change as well, and then the ability to still do my skill set that I have just in a different environment is why that's how I kind of made the transition.
Okay. Yes, it seems like the social work skills are very transferable, and I just really like how you are in that field because you are, as a social worker, you're going to keep the person in mind in everything that you do. You know, all the training that you give to the higher ups, you have the person in mind. Whereas maybe another person coming from another field just has like the profit in mind or just wants to get the product out there. You're keeping the person in mind. So I hope our listeners heard that. The social work skills are very transferable. So now we're going to go into your next thing that you do. I want to talk about your nonprofit, RISE, RISE. First, can you tell us what RISE stands for and what is RISE? What is the organization all about?
Yes, it is resources, inspiring, success, and empowering. Like it was said, we work with youth and young adults who primarily age out of the foster care system. We also work with youth who experience homelessness. So that's we consider youth anywhere from 10 to 17. And then we also call 18 to 24 years old youth, just by definition, from a federal level. But we provide different resources and different programming to help either prevent or intervene in them being homeless. So on our preventative side, we do mentoring. We have the first and only STEM program for girls in foster care, just to decrease the barrier to access for high level jobs, right? With low barrier to access when it comes to, I'm sorry, low barrier to entry when it
Mhm.
comes to those technology and STEM jobs anyway. And then from an intervention side, we help house youth who experience homelessness 18 who are 18 to 24.
Mm. Wow, that's a lot that organization does, and it's only been I read like 5 years, or how long has it been in existence?
Yeah, we're going on 6 years.
6 years.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So what made you I know you have a background yourself in foster care,
Mm-hmm.
but what made you want to concentrate in like that advocacy work? Because what you're doing is advocacy, within your organization. What made you want to concentrate in that work?
Mostly because the lack of advocacy, it's kind of like um it was so many individuals trying to take what's used for other populations and apply them to youth and young adults. But youth homelessness and youth needs look completely different. Um, it's easy to say if I work with the chronically homeless that I can, though those who experience chronic homelessness, I can take those same things, that same skill set, and apply it to youth. You can say that that might be easier to do, but it's not. It's not the same. The population is different. The reasons why youth are becoming homeless is different now than what it was. Um, so that's kind of what motivated me to kind of be in that space. Rise is kind of one of those only organizations where our only focus is youth.
Mm.
Other organizations, they'll take on other populations, but our only focus is primarily just youth.
Okay. Wow, that's really great. So I'm going to focus on your organization, Rise, and I'm going to ask you this question. For upcoming social work students that might be interested in starting a nonprofit, such as yours or like any nonprofit, can you tell us a little bit of what that looks like? What does starting a nonprofit look like? What does the day-to-day um, deal looks like, and what does maintaining it looks like?
Oh, that's a lot. So starting a nonprofit from on paper, when you think about like the paperwork and the compliance part, to me, I always tell people that's the easiest part. You can fill out an application, you can pay whatever the fee is, and await the decision from wherever it needs to come, right? That's the easy part. The hard part is the management and the management of people. A nonprofit technically does not belong to anyone, even if it was your idea, even if it was your calling, even if it was, your baby, as we like to call a lot of the things that we start. A nonprofit is governed by a board of directors who make decisions on the activities of that nonprofit. The nonprofit itself belongs to the community that it serves.
Mm.
So that's very hard for people to kind of conceptualize. So one thing you want to make sure you do when you get started is understand that, and then understand where that will fit in the grand scheme of what you want to do in your career and for your life. Have your exit plan available, because you have to stop at some point. You have to exit or move out of the role that you're in the nonprofit eventually. It just has to happen. It has to grow. Because again, it doesn't belong to you, it belongs to the community. Um, my day to day, basically, really, it varies. It could be meetings with local committees and coalitions. It can be one on one lunches with stakeholders and individuals. Because we're a small nonprofit, I do get into the programming side. So it could be me running a mentoring group one night if I don't have an intern to do it. It really varies from a grand scheme. Now at night, that's the day to day. At night, it could be me grant making, so looking for grants or writing on grants, or also managing our bookkeeping, meeting with our key individuals who help with the accounting and the fiscal responsibility side. So it's a lot. But it's very rewarding, and it's not that it's not doable.
Mm. Yeah, you definitely keep yourself busy. And I never actually heard what you just said, that a nonprofit does not belong to the individual, it belongs to the community. I've never heard of that. So that's really good for, social work students and our listeners to know that, if you do have an idea or desire to start up a nonprofit, you're not just doing it for yourself. It really should be community oriented and community focused. And that's actually news to me. And I will definitely keep that in mind, because I think a lot of us, we do want to start this and start that, but we don't realize that it's not for us at the end of the day. We're servants. So, social workers, we should have that servant heart and just realize that it's for the community. And then, like everything that you do, you just do a little bit of everything. So
Yeah.
you're working the program inside. You just do a little bit of everything, which I think, as a baby nonprofit or like a young nonprofit, it's going on 6 years, but still relatively young. That's kind of what it takes. It takes that determination and dedication. And I really like how you said that it's very doable, and you just have to, work towards it and just really want to see this nonprofit grow. So, do you see your nonprofit like just continue to remain in existence and just growing, or where do you see Rise going?
Yeah, so for Rise, I definitely see it growing. The point of a nonprofit is for it to run as long as the social issue runs. You never want to end before the need ends, which can happen, and it's kind of hard when you have to shutter the doors of a nonprofit. It does happen quite often, especially for smaller nonprofits. But the point of you starting and having those real conversations about that ownership and about how you're going to function and your compliance and how you're going to be structured, you're supposed to start at that point so that you won't have to shutter your doors later on. So Rise, we have plans to keep expanding our programming to not only just right now we're in Tarrant County, and sometimes we function in Houston. We're trying to expand to be all of Tarrant, all of Houston, and eventually to all of Texas. So our programming is we can take it and we can duplicate it. So that's what we plan to do. But with duplication, we have to have reliability and validity. So it goes into that research side. I have to be able to track these metrics and measure these outcomes. So our biggest plan going into our immediate plans, I should say, is to come up with better ways to track our outcomes and our data and our metrics. So that is where Rise is going. We're trying to get into being an evidence-based organization.
And that's really important. I mean, I've heard that over and over. Evidence-based is important, and it's important, especially when it comes to grant funding and stuff like that. They want you to prove that what you're doing actually is making an impact. All right, so let's go into. You also have another business. I think it's Powerhouse Atkins, or Atkins Powerhouse.
It's Atkins Powerhouse.
Powerhouse. And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Atkins Powerhouse is like born from Rise. Rise doesn't run it or anything like that. But when I started Rise and I started to learn about nonprofits, naturally, other organizations that were led by people of color started to reach out and ask me, like, how did I do what I was doing? So we have great relationships with organizations such as Meta, used to be Facebook, it's Meta now, and also Lockheed Martin. And we continue to cultivate relationships that do sometimes result in monies. And so when we start putting our programming out there and we start talking about like the funding and the relationships we started having, other organizations or other people who are people of color who wanted to start a nonprofit or have a nonprofit started to reach out to me. And at first it was kind of like, let me pick your brain and let me take you to coffee and let me do it. And then after a while, I had a couple of mentors who were like, Renika, you need to make this a thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't want another job. And it was like, well, it's not really a job, but you really need to make this, for one, you need to make it legit. You need to cultivate these relationships and actually charge for this time. Because a lot of times we're scared to charge for the help that we do have. But it's very justifiable because it's very tedious work. It's very is yeah. The information is like a fast track through the process, and that you would otherwise do on your own. So yeah, that's how Atkins Powerhouse Consulting came to be. We're starting off consulting like individuals and different organizations, startup organizations. Eventually, I want to get into the contracting space where we can contract out our services and also help other nonprofits learn how to contract out their services and give their nonprofit a job.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Seems like you're doing really big things with everything that you're doing. And I really like your journey, how you went from, being that social worker in direct practice, moving into starting up your own nonprofit. Now you helping people start up their own nonprofit. It's a really, unique journey. And I feel like you just have a heart to help people and help others. And it's just kind of seen all through your journey.
Thank you.
And we're going to kind of move into the political advocacy questions. I think all that you do, from your day to day, from your 9 to 5 job to your organizations that you lead, you are definitely advocating, and you're advocating on a political level. So right now, we're just going to just ask you a few questions in regards to that. So there are many ways to remain politically engaged. What are some of the ways that you choose to remain politically engaged?
So I remain politically engaged through participating in our local politics, whether it's local elections or attending city council meetings or understanding how our politics and how our councils are structured. That's like the basic level, civic engagement at a very basic level. Another way that I kind of get engaged with the political side is to understand who makes the decisions, how do they get handed down from Washington. So and I've just recently gotten like solid information about why things may be the way they are. So who decides the federal level, I'm not the federal level, the federal definition of homelessness? Who decides the requirements for youth to enter in a program or to participate in a funded program by the federal government? Who puts those stipulations in place? How can I become a part of those committees who get to push back on some of those requirements and say they're not inclusive or not enough, or things of that sort? So that's kind of how I've become politically engaged.
That's really good. Understanding who makes the decisions. Because, like you said, sometimes it's just like one word or one policy that kind of doesn't include somebody that might need the help that exists. But when we understand who makes the decisions, or we understand who we need to talk to, what committee that we need to be a part of. So I really think that is definitely a good way. It's kind of like going to the detail of the problem and trying to make a change at that level. So, in your personal pursuits, in what ways have you seen your engagement in politics yield results in your area of practice, or like in your business organizations or in your nonprofit?
Yeah, so from a personal side, I always encourage people to work explicitly with nonprofits who are led by people of color, and intentionally with nonprofits who serve the Black community and things of that sort. So, from a political standpoint, just pushing and advocating for that work, for that inclusion in some of that, whether it's through funding or whether it's access to opportunities, it's kind of how some of that gets pushed out, and I get to meet those kind of personal goals of being the town crier for Blacks and nonprofits.
Yeah.
From a rise standpoint, from a youth homelessness standpoint, we have been able to see a more awareness around youth who experience homelessness. And not only that, awareness around how to identify and find and engage youth who experience homelessness. Um, because we only work with youth, it's easier for us to kind of understand and communicate the unique functions inside of youth homelessness that only pertain to youth. For example, for a long time, we thought that youth would present at shelters and things of that sort, like an adult would, someone over age of 24 or whatever, or somebody who's been chronically homeless would, but they don't. They don't. They present at schools, they present at work, at their employment usually knows their housing status. And sometimes they just present through other youth. And a lot of times they don't live outside or in the shelter because it's unsafe. A lot of times they couch surf. And it's not even just a normal kind of couch surf. It's not like, oh, I'm gonna sleep here tonight and I'm staying with a friend and I can be here. They're very unstable, right? They'll be with a friend one day, friend next day, they do those types of things. So just trying to strip away some of those myths and bring forward that awareness. Awareness is how we kind of engage on the political side. And I mean, recently becoming a part of those committees and saying, hey, no, that's not, we can't do it. We can't do it that way. Tarrant County Coalition just got a great amount of funding for a program specifically for youth. So being able to sit on that committee and say that the way you want to put that out may work for the chronically homeless, this is what it needs to look like for youth, is a huge deal from a political standpoint.
That's good. While you were speaking, I was just reminded of, I've wrote a few papers on youth homelessness. And yes, in all the papers that I wrote, I just realized that, the statistics that are presented, they're definitely undercounted population because, like you said, it's a very mass thing. It's a very hidden thing. Like youths, you're not just going to see them on the street or in the homeless shelters like you would see a chronically homeless person. It's just really hidden. There's so much more that needs to go into like really trying to find out how many youths are really homeless before we can actually even help them. When you don't even realize the magnitude of the problem, you can't really help them. So I'm really glad that you're doing what you're doing.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what simple advice would you give social work students that want to get involved in like policy and advocacy?
My simple advice is to study. I know that sounds crazy, and I know we do a lot of studying in social work, but I would say go back as far as 10 years and start studying it. Well, it depends on what subject you're going to be in, right? What subject of advocacy or what area of advocacy you're going into. But go back as far as possible and start to study and see the trend, see what happened. Don't just study what you're going to get into. So if you're going to get into animal rights and stuff like that, don't just study animal rights. Also study the other things that may affect it. Study labor laws, study zoning, study the things that kind of cross with what you're going to go into, because it all affects your advocacy in a certain space. The other side of it is, don't just get wrapped up in advocacy and sitting behind a desk and things of that sort, or always talking to stakeholders who are up here. A lot of times, especially in the CAP, community administrative practice, we try to attract or approach those who are on our level. So executives talk to executives and things of that sort. Sometimes it takes doing that direct practice on the ground level and actually being in the community to actually be able to better advocate for them, and understanding that I am a resource. I am not the source. The community is the source. The community knows what their needs are, and their needs they don't have to meet my needs. They don't have to be my needs. They don't have to be anything that I want or what I deem as being a legit need. My job as an advocate is so that their voice is heard. But you got to know who they are. You can't always just talk to other advocates or talk to other stakeholders, people who get paid to deal with them. You have to actually be involved with them in
Yeah,
order to understand what you need to do as an advocate.
that's true. That's really true. And I really like your advice. Study and not just focus on, what's happening in that situation right now, because like you said, there's trends, there's patterns that, we as advocates we need to be aware of in order to advocate effectively. And then also, like you mentioned, like tying in that micro practice, that direct practice, because that's the best way to advocate for someone. You have to know exactly what they want you to advocate for. Like, and I think I do agree with you that sometimes we talk to other advocates, we talk to the people that are equal to us or higher up than us, because we can get our money from there. But it's really important not to forget that you need to actually talk to the people that you're trying to help,
Yes.
because that's the whole purpose of advocacy. So, how do you engage people in a cause that you are so passionate about?
Really through speaking. Through speaking, through meeting them, through forming like authentic relationships. I'm very much the type of person to be like everybody is not for me, everybody is not for my cause. Whatever resonates with those individuals resonate with them. So I'm not trying to impress everybody, I'm not trying to attract everybody. I made the education available for youth who experience homelessness, and then if they want to get on board, they get on board. If not, I empower them to go and share with other individuals.
Yeah. And I think narrowing down like what you're focused on is really helpful, especially like in a world where there's, so many problems, so many issues to be engaged with, just narrowing down what you want to focus on and what you're passionate about, it really helps. And I'm going to end off with this question just as an advice to our listeners. So, were you ever nervous starting with your advocacy journey? And if so, can you give us a little bit of advice of what can we do if we're like nervous about starting out with advocacy and political engagement?
Yeah, absolutely. I was, yeah, I'm probably always nervous. Cuz nervousness is it's a natural thing. My biggest advice is even do it when you're scared. Even do it when you feel like you're not ready, right? You don't have to know everything. You don't have to act like you know everything. You do have to know where the knowledge is, but just do it. Just do it. Whatever it is in your advocacy, whether it's rallying, whether it's starting a coalition, whether it's gaining supporters, whether it is doing the research and making a report or doing some type of project or whatever it is, do it even if you are nervous. Because honestly, your biggest lessons, your biggest rewards are going to come out of the mistakes you make.
Oh, your
That's
biggest
where you're going to learn the most.
that's true. We don't we think like just we sometimes we strive for perfection, but like in the midst of perfection, that's not where you learn if you're perfect. You learn when you're not perfect. It allows imperfection creates room for improvement. So
Yes.
I love that. That's where your biggest lessons are learned. So even if you're scared, do it anyways. Thank you, Renika.
You are so welcome. Thank you for having me.
So, I'm pretty sure we learned a lot today, especially everything that you do. We're going to take all this and, apply it. Thank you, Renika, for spending time with me today. Thank you to all of our listeners for joining us for another episode of Social Work Amplified. I hope you were able to learn something today that empowers you to be more politically engaged and helps you shape a better tomorrow. Until next time.